Let's just say that, hypothetically speaking, it were possible to accelerate your molecular structure until the rest of the world seemed as if it were standing still. It's called hypertonic.
Oh boy, it's a time travel podcast. My name is Nate, and he needs a clock stopper just to find time to co-host. It's Brian Martin.
Yeah, if there's anybody who's stopped up, guys, it's me.
Brian, there is a disturbing trend developing here, I'm afraid. This is our 5th episode in the bold new era for Oh Boy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And the first episode was already on the docket from our prior programming. So
Looper. We were going to discuss Looper there.
Looper was coming no matter what. Since that time, we've selected 4 properties.
Properties is a bold statement. The clock that went backwards. I can't wait for the big sequel.
Well, you have selected 19th century literature and Midnight in Paris. I have selected Time Cop and Clockstoppers. So
yeah, boy.
I don't know if this is a good pairing or if I'm just...
Hey, it's like Matt Damon says. You got to do an art house pick and then you got to do a safe pick. You know?
Which ones are the safe ones?
Certainly not Clockstoppers. You think. Actually, you know what? No, I think the movie Clockstoppers is like cracking open a time capsule from 2002.
It really is.
But somebody left food inside of it. And the first and the first smell you get is overpoweringly nauseating.
What would that be, a Lunchable? Didn't those pop up and around?
Oh, probably. You ever see in Super Size Me where rest in peace Morgan Spurlock?
Yeah, I was going to say.
He did the comparison with McDonald's burgers underneath those glass domes and saw how long it took them to actually decompose and grow mold. I think you could put a Lunchable in a time capsule and it'd still be fine today. From 2002. I think there would be like a bottle of like maybe Orbit soda in there.
Orbit or Jolt? No, Jolt goes further back than that, doesn't it?
Jolt goes a little bit farther back. Orbit was the one with the little gummy balls inside of it.
If anybody out there actually knows Clockstoppers before tonight, shoot us an email and let us know that you knew about this movie.
Some people might have seen it as a kid. Wasn't it a Nickelodeon movie?
It was a Nickelodeon movie. And this is a movie I selected. I threw it on the list. I just threw it on the list. We've got a running tally of things that we might want to discuss. I threw this on the list because it was just a title that I remembered for a long, long time. Like, I remember when Clockstoppers came out. Never saw Clockstoppers.
Great title. I got to say, Cockknockers is a great Clockstoppers is a great title. Both of those would make great titles.
It's not a bad title. I don't know. Just the TV commercials and the title just seared into my brain. And I said, you know what? We need to watch Clockstoppers. And I pulled it out of the ether, out of the past of 2002.
The word need is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, but, as it turns out.
Do I regret it? No. No, I don't regret it.
No. Surely not. I don't regret this.
Well, good. I'm going to say I might regret putting you through it.
No, I don't regret it, and I don't regret it for one reason, and she's got a name. And it's Paula Garcés, who plays Francesca in this movie.
I don't know if you're allowed to say that. How old is she in this movie?
28 years old, buddy.
Wow.
She's like 47 now. She is very of age in this film, even though she doesn't look it.
I was going to say she plays it young.
She does.
Wow.
I don't know that I'd say she's a particularly good actress, but I'm not sure I would say anybody in this movie, aside from Michael Biehn, is particularly good.
I don't know that he's necessarily good in this.
He's just Baining it up, man.
Yeah.
Nobody's particularly good in this movie.
I don't think the lead is particularly bad.
No, he's fine.
He's fine.
He is your typical run-of-the-mill, early 2000s, Sum 41 listening teenager.
Right.
This movie, Clockstoppers, I'm going to be doing that all night. Cockknocker. You remember who Cockknocker is?
Yeah, the Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah, Jay and Silent Bob.
thought I'd never find your precious blunt cave, did you, Hemp Knight? But now, you and your sidekick are finally in the grasp of...
Mark Hamill plays the cock knocker.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Great name for a villain. Anyway, this movie, screenplay by Rob Hedden, who is the writer-director of Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, for those of you keeping score. J. David Stern and David N. Weiss also co-wrote it. They both worked together on Shrek 2, Jimmy Neutron, and the Smurfs movies.
Oof.
Weiss also worked on, he was the writer of All Dogs Go to Heaven and Rock-a-Doodle, which is my wife's favorite movie from her childhood.
Rock-a-Doodle?
I don't know, man. She just, all her childhood was Rock-a-Doodle and a bunch of Adam Sandler movies.
My wife mentions All Dogs Go to Heaven every now and then.
Yeah. And the story was by the three of these folks and Andy Hedden, who I assume is related to Rob Hedden, and probably just in a drunken stupor suggested, hey, what if I had a watch that stopped time one night? And that's where it all started. The reason I think we gravitated towards this movie is that it's directed by William Riker himself, or Thomas Riker himself. Jonathan Frakes, #1.
Yeah.
On Star Trek and on this movie.
Also, one of the things I knew when that movie was out. Like, I knew it was a Jonathan Frakes movie because Star Trek. But he has gone on to a prolific career in television direction.
Yes, yeah. And he's directed episodes of just about every Star Trek series there is at this point.
And outside of that.
And beyond that.
Yeah. Like, this guy's not hurting for a paycheck. He's doing what he likes. And
that's part of the reason he got this gig. This movie was made on a really tight budget. And they gave it to Frakes. Like, he can turn it into something that'll make money. And he did. I think this movie made its money back.
Did it? Did we look that up?
I think I remember reading about it. And I honestly don't care enough to look again. But
and
I know it was made,
listeners.
It was made for pretty cheap. So what is Clockstoppers? Well, it's a movie about Zach Gibbs, played by Jesse Bradford. He's your typical, as I said, turn-of-the-century all-American teenager. He's a snarky kid who gets bullied by a couple of burnouts, longs for a status-setting sweet ride, and pines over a beautiful Venezuelan student, as I said, played by Paula Garces. His only friend, I guess, is a guy named Meeker, played by Gary K. Mutembirwa.
Good.
And Meeker works at an athletic store, but like most kids in the early 2000s, would rather be DJing competitively. Zach's normal day-to-day takes a sharp turn one day when his father is out of town for a physics conference, and Zach runs across a special package from one of his father's former students, a guy named Doppler, who I regret to inform you is played by Third Rock from the Sun's French Stewart. As soon as he turned up, I was like, Doppler is an employee of Quantum Tech. Hey, there's a connective thread to what we used to be about.
Yeah.
And he's been captured by some of his coworkers, led by Michael Biehn as COO Henry Gates. Gates has an interest in the tech that Doppler has created, and Zach has haplessly affixed to his wrist, a watch that, when activated, sends the user and anyone in direct contact with him into hypertime, which runs faster than standard time does and makes the world around them seem to slow to a halt. Kind of like the Quicksilver scenes in the X-Men movies.
Exactly like that.
That do this much, much better. So Gates and his cronies intend to use this power to rule the world, but there's one big problem, and that's that subjects experiencing prolonged exposure to hypertime age rapidly. But who cares? Freezing time is really rad, and what begins as a novelty that helps Zach woo Francesca and gives them both a chance to help the profoundly talentless Meeker win a DJ competition quickly gives way to a game of cat and clock-stopping mouse as Gates and his cronies kidnap Zach's father to solve their aging problem, and Zach and Francesca rush to his aid, all in the interest of mastering the titular clock that could stop time. That pretty well sums it up, I think.
It does very well sums it up. Good job.
I had to take 2 or 3 passes at that because I was like, what the hell was this movie about? Multiple times. Because
I'm glad that you're the one that writes the synopsis around here.
At first I'm like, okay, so they've already got the tech. What do they need the tech for? And then it's because everybody keeps aging. And they're like, oh, that's the missing piece, is that we have to stop the aging process so we can actually use this effectively.
But the only one that ages is French Stewart.
Well, his dad does too.
Yeah,
Dr.
I
Gibbs
guess a little bit at the end,
ages a little bit. Like when he shows back up, and Julia Sweeney answers the door, it's like, God, what happened to you? Yeah. He's like, ooh, a toodle pip.
Well, here's the
French
thing.
Stewart noticeably ages, and they use that to give us a really questionable punchline at the very end of the movie. But go ahead.
We'll get there. But here's the thing. So, as I leveled with you up front, there's very little I remembered about this. Now, I think we have a discussion as to whether this even accounts for time travel. Does this even work as time travel?
Yeah, I'm going to say yes for two reasons. One, we are traveling through time. We are altering the way in which we're traveling through time. It's time dilation, right?
Okay.
Where you are moving at a different rate through time than everything around you. In a lot of ways, it's kind of the closest aligned to something in reality because it's the sort of time travel that Stephen Hawking talked about.
Right.
Where you
like
can
you see in like Ender's Game and stuff.
His whole thing was that when you're in a plane moving against the international dateline, that you, in effect, are traveling through time, moving at a different rate through time than those around you. I don't even think you have to be moving against the dateline to do it. It's just about where you're at in relation to people on the ground. He was smarter than I am. I've read books about this, but God help me, it's hard to parse it all out. But the other reason I say this is time travel is for what I suggested a little while ago, and that's that when you watch this movie, you will absolutely feel like you've stepped back to the dawn of the 21st century.
I don't think that
whether
counts.
whether it's the fashion or the music or the attitude, you want to show to a kid this is what life was like in 2002.
Oh my God.
This is what you show them.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. I will say I'm not going to use that as a metric for time travel because then we could just watch a bunch of old shit.
Yeah, certainly not. But I do think this qualifies as a form of time travel because...
Time capsule was a good way to put it because they lean heavy into everything in the way that Nickelodeon did.
Nick. Nickelodeon.
I didn't even know this was a Nickelodeon movie.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Nickelodeon made movies.
Yeah, the first forays were like the Rugrats movie and like Jimmy Neutron and Snow Day. You remember the movie Snow Day?
Cuba Gooding Jr.?
No, that's Snow Dogs.
Then no.
Okay. Well, Snow Day was a movie that they released that was supposed to be like a feature film Adventures of Pete and Pete and got reworked into just a generic movie about a school on Snow Day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sad.
I like Pete and Pete.
It's one of the greats.
Yeah.
With regards to the time capsule aspect, there are so many needle drops in this movie.
It's unreal. I mean, it's basically just a soundtrack for 2002.
It is, to the extent that there are not one but two Blink-182 songs in this movie.
Yeah, and Smash Mouth, I think, is on there. And
Smash Mouth is in here. Sugar Ray shows up. Third Eye Blind. Who else we got? Oh, there was one I made a note. There's a Sugar Ray cover of the Steve Miller Band song Abracadabra.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, that was pretty good. Dandy Warhol's Bohemian Like You is in here, and I love the Dandy Warhols.
Yes. Veronica Mars.
Yeah.
Love Veronica Mars. I wish there was a time travel episode of Veronica Mars.
Yeah, really. Never Let You Go, Third Eye Blind. It's pretty good. Smash Mouth Holiday. I put, ooh, Smash Mouth. But there was one song that pops up in here, and I'm like, this is not a good song. Time After Time. There's a cover of Time After Time.
Time after time.
Famous Cyndi Lauper song, right? And then in the end credits, I was like, oh, it was Uncle Cracker. Remember that guy?
I do.
Of course it wasn't good. So
I remember him. He was a Kid Rock's friend, right?
They seemed like friends. Oh, and then there was more Smash Mouth at the end, too. So there was two Smash Mouth songs, two Blink-182 songs. Folks,
the guy with
this
a
is
BMX rider, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah, like jumping around and flipping around and shit.
Fashion.
Like, it's all so 2002.
The friend walks around with a pacifier hanging around his neck. You remember when people did that? Like a baby pacifier, folks. I don't know what the general age of our audience is, but I guarantee they didn't know we wore pacifiers around our neck. And when I say we, I mean they. I never did it.
We mean Nate.
It was me.
No.
I started that trend.
Real weird trend, guys.
That's a weird thing. It didn't last long either. So it was probably just 2002.
It lasted long enough to get immortalized on the cover of an X-Men comic. Believe it or not.
Oh, yeah? I don't remember that, but...
It was the first issue of NYX, which was the series that introduced X-23.
Oh, and
Wolverine's
she had a
daughter.
Pacifier around her neck?
She did not. No, the main character in that
goodness.
series had a pacifier on the front cover of the first issue.
That's nuts.
So it was just weird looks, guys. But fortunately, I mean, like, the main point of this movie is not the fashion of the period.
What is the point of this movie?
I would call this movie a caper, a romp.
But what is it about? What is it telling us? What is it trying to say?
Look, I am going to just get this out there. There is no deep meaning to this movie whatsoever. Not necessarily the kind of movie that you come to looking for a deeper meaning, but the deepest thing you get is the connection between Zach and his father.
Right.
Which is initially unclear, and I actually think this is pretty funny at the beginning. When we meet Zach, he is flipping old shit on eBay.
Yeah.
Kind of like running a nostalgia shop, almost.
You know, nostalgia is denial. Denial of the painful present.
Really?
And the name for this fallacy is called golden age thinking.
That's why I picked it.
Yeah. The connective thread.
Yeah, good connected.
So we open in this lecture room, this very small lecture room, with a teacher. It's Zach's dad, but at the time I didn't know that yet, and I said, this teacher seems to exist in the space between Joaquin Phoenix and Harold Ramis. That's what he looks like, anyway. I'm not sure I've ever seen this guy in anything else. It just has this look about him. It's almost like they wanted to get Lundberg from Office Space.
Yeah, right.
But they couldn't quite. It was like, too big at that
the
point.
Poor man's Lundberg, exactly.
Ooh, yeah. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
Yeah. And Zach just kind of shows up in his classroom.
Yeah, I thought he was like a student that was late for class.
He appears like a student, and then they walk outside together, and they seem to be way too close. And then Zach tries to get the professor to co-sign for a car. And I was like, that's a fucking weird thing to ask your academic advisor to do for you, man. And then it's like, oh, it's his dad.
It's his dad.
And Zach is still in high school, as near as I can tell. He doesn't actually go to the university. His dad just teaches there.
Right.
And again, one of his father's former students is Doppler, this guy played by French Stewart, who is abducted from an airport in a really shitty disguise in the first scene of the movie.
Yeah.
But this is one of the cool things I think the movie does.
Oh?
When Doppler is abducted at the airport, he's about to get on the plane, and suddenly he is violently pulled backwards through the airport at a rapid speed and thrown into the back of a van.
Right. And you
now
don't know
later,
what's
as we
going on.
understand how hypertime works, we know that Gates's henchmen have entered hypertime and are just probably walking him back at a regular pace for them. But to anybody seeing Doppler, it looks like he's just boosh speeding through.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It is. Actually, now that I'm sitting here and thinking about it, this movie came out in 2002.
Yeah, it's after the Trade Center bomb, if that's what you're getting at.
But the way they treat the airport is not like that at all.
Oh, my God, you're right. This was clearly filmed before 9/11.
Yeah, definitely filmed before 2001 because he's just walking around handing people cash to get their plane tickets and stuff. Like, the security wasn't there, nothing. And
not doing that.
To say nothing of the fact that he's walking around in a giant beard.
He looks like one of those Muppets that has like a dude inside of it.
Yeah, or...
What's his... Sweetums?
Enough that I didn't know it was French Stewart.
No, I was super disappointed. Like, it's like, okay, who is it? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Okay, so this movie, not good. right?
No, surely not.
But in breaking down my thoughts for this, I feel like there's a part where it starts to go off the rails.
Ooh.
Because as I'm breaking this down, the best part of this whole movie to me is the opening credits and the motion graphics.
Surely.
It's
the opening credits.
Really good.
Even the opening credits, though, this is like 2002 style opening credits.
Yes.
It's very cool. It's very visually engaging and arresting. The music
and storytelling.
It is, yeah.
The graphics are like clocks moving around. They're Clockstoppers, and it's got this rockin' music. And I just got this big old smile on my face. Like, man, I'm going to enjoy the shit out of this.
It's an informative opening title sequence.
And
it's
good.
Really, really great.
Yeah, it's really good. But don't be fooled, folks.
Don't be fooled like we were.
But I will say, on a rewatch-ish, while I'm kind of forming my thoughts on this, if you think about it like a pilot, going back to the episode we did on sliders.
Yeah.
Right? It takes them 20 minutes to get that watch into his possession. That's not bad.
No, that's pretty efficient.
So
this is a lot like Sliders. Now that I'm thinking, like, structurally, it's very similar to Sliders. Like, in terms of, like, the device, it's in the basement, they have a little fun with it, and things go tits up. It's that classic kind of kid discovers device scenario.
I kind of broke it down. That's a good comparison. Open with the music, telling you kind of what era you're in. You know exactly what's going on. But they really did the work, right? They introduced the girl. They introduced the friend. They introduced the goal of the main character, what he wants and what he needs. And what I mean by that from a writer's standpoint is what he wants is a car, right?
Yes.
He's working towards a car. That's what he thinks his goal is. What does he really need? A relationship with his dad.
If the Mustang is the car that you want when I get back, well, then that's the car we'll get.
Dad, it's not still going to be there when you get back. Just come look at it tonight.
Then I get back. I got to go over Doppler's project tonight.
That's what this is about, isn't it?
What?
This isn't even about me looking at other cars, is it?
Zach, what are you talking about?
Nothing. You always have time for your students, and you never have time for your own kids.
Hey, I asked you to come to this conference. Who was the one who said he was too busy?
The Congress of Applied Science. There's fun for the whole family.
Zach, look, I promise I'll take you to
the Doppler.
Exactly.
That's your want and your need, and that's all set up early. The relationship with his family is kind of set up. You know what that whole ecosystem is.
The mom and the younger sister who is kind of like needling him all the time. To that, like I was saying a second ago, the scene where Zach shows up at his dad's lecture hall and then starts badgering him about co-signing for a car, that's actually a really great introduction for these two characters, because you're like, wait a minute, what is the relationship? Oh, it keeps you invested, it keeps you interested, and then it all makes sense.
And it illustrates that strained relationship that the two of them have, where the father doesn't really recognize that he's got a strained relationship with his son, right?
Yeah.
And it also does the thing where it sets up the science for you. If you're in this car and so-and-so is driving in his fast car, you can almost seem to be standing still. Like that little, if you're paying attention, they're telling you what the movie's about. Now, this is all on a very basic level.
This is a movie for kids.
And they're doing the work. They're doing the work to lay it out. They end up laying out the problem, meaning who the bad guys are. And all of this happens in the span of 20 minutes before our lead character has his hands physically on the watch. And we all know what the watch does.
Right.
That's not bad. And none of the characters are particularly terrible.
There's nobody unlikable. And as much grief as I'm giving French Stewart, the character of Doppler contrasts well with the other characters. Like, he stands out. For better or worse, he stands out. He's like a Weasley kind of... I say ne'er-do-well a lot. He's really kind of a ne'er-do-well. Like, he's not...
How-do-well?
He's surely not a villain, but he's just an unsavory character. It's like if this movie had been made in the 40s, Peter Lorre would have played the character that French Stewart plays. Hey, Rick, hyper time.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't think any of the characters are particularly bad. I think some of them are extraneous. I don't think you need the friend at all.
Yeah, there's absolutely no point. In fact, I made that note after the point where it went off the rails for me.
Let me guess. The dance party.
The DJ competition.
The DJ competition.
What in the absolute fuck was that?
Yeah, let's talk about that. That was a low point for me, but it is not what I consider it going off the rails. I'll give you the moment that I came up with once we dissect this scene we're talking about.
I ain't gonna be here forever. Check it out. Bam! Fleur. 102. DJ contest tomorrow night. I'm signed up.
Underground dance partay. Yeah, that's very funk fliggity of you.
Dude, I've been practicing. Right. Sneaked away from the study hall, worked the turntables in the tech room. A Vicky Vicky, a Vicky, a Vicky Vicky, a Vicky Vicky Vicky, a Vicky Vicky Vicky.
Yeah, Meeker is really juiced up for this DJ competition he's entering, and the people he's against are those two bullies I mentioned in the synopsis. These guys that are just, they're not like husky bullies. They're not like jocks, because by the early 2000s, bullies had changed. Now the people who used to be...
your mama's bullies.
No. The people who used to be the ones getting bullied are now the bullies. Like, it changed, because these two guys are clearly people with no prospects. They've no future. They may not have parents.
They're like the burnouts on Freaks and Geeks.
They are. They are absolutely burnouts. But they're doing the DJ competition, and they're competing directly against Meeker. And it's a back and forth thing, like, a rap battle.
I was going to say, think 8 Mile, but lame.
Extraordinarily lame. So I said, the note I had as Francesca and Zach arrive at the DJ competition: watch this plot. Is it extraneous? Does Meeker serve a purpose? So I said that before the scene started.
Yeah.
The next thing I wrote was, Meeker sucks. It's comically bad. How bad at DJing? It's like, how did he ever think he was any good at this at all? Kind of bad.
It wasn't like a choking situation. I just mentioned 8 Mile.
No, it's like he's never seen a turntable before.
8 Mile is a great movie. I don't know if you watched that. I love 8
Mile.
Sure,
Curtis Hanson. Great movie.
B-Rabbit chokes.
Yes.
He's good at it. He gets up for his rap battle, but he chokes. This seems to indicate that Meeker doesn't even know how a turntable's supposed to work. It's not like he got up there and then choked. He's just really bad at it.
Like, his first exposure to a turntable was entering a big competition that requires using a turntable.
Francesca even mentions, boy, your friend's not very smooth, is he?
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, he sure isn't. But earlier in the movie, he was like, oh, we're going to get him. Like, that guy's probably not even that good. You got this.
Did I hear you signed up for the spin-off tonight?
Yeah. Hey, Didmore, lay off.
Hey, yo. I ain't on him, all right? Listen up here, buddy. Tonight, it's just gonna be me and you up there on stage. You're not gonna have your little sister here backing you up.
What was that? Because all I hear is a crowd going, "A go Meeker! A go Meeker! A go Meeker!"
Woof.
The bigger issue with this scene, though, is, as we've established, they're not stopping time. They're moving at Flash-like speeds. In fact, there's a kid in there with a Flash t-shirt on, which I assume is a
nod.
Yeah, nod, because they're moving at super speed. And what's the first thing they do to Meeker in their super speed? They turn his neck.
Right.
So the joke for the scene is that they are moving so fast nobody can see them, and they're moving his body to make it look like he's dancing.
Right.
None of this will work.
No.
I mean, this is like stop motion with a person. And in the meantime, you've moved this person's neck at supersonic speed, and you're flexing his body at super speed. It just is. That's all I could think is, like, this guy is wrecked.
Absolutely. He should be moving like Peter Gabriel's head in that Sledgehammer video. Like when it starts to shake really fast.
Yeah, I mean, he's dead. He's dead.
His insides and bones should be pulverized.
Yeah.
Just absolute powder inside.
And I guess you're not supposed to think about that because you're probably supposed to be 12, but I couldn't think of anything else.
This scene is very hard to take seriously, and...
Well, you're not supposed to. It's supposed to be funny.
I know, but it's not funny
But it's not
either.
that either, no.
Funny, to an extent, is the scene where Zach and Francesca decide, hey, let's go downtown and just fuck with people.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Fair,
amusing. Yeah. The DJ competition becomes wholly extraneous. They just left it in to hit the 90-minute mark with the movie.
Everything about Meeker could be replaced with something else.
Sure.
You can remove Meeker entirely and just have Zach work at the store. I'm working a lame, not part-time job. They're paying me $5.25 an hour, and I can't afford this car. So I'm doing these other things on the side to make I'm working the grind because I want to pay for this car.
The problem is that I think they wanted to make Meeker Zach's man in the chair without knowing that he has to serve as a man in the chair to be the man in the chair.
I think they just thought he needed a friend.
I mean, yeah, but I mean,
I guess if
they're searching for a greater purpose for this character and finding none.
Yeah, maybe at the end,
right?
Yeah,
with the paint guns.
I think they just wanted somebody cool. I think if he's absent and it really is just Zach and Francesca, that's pretty empty.
It is.
Going back to my perception of this movie from some 20 years ago, in my brain, I thought it was 3 teenagers and they each had Clockstopper watches. And they stopped time and they fought crime or something, you know?
You might be conflating this with any one of a number of movies that looked very similar back then, but I do agree that the poster makes it look like all 3 of these people are traveling through time or doing something to manipulate time. But really, it's just Zach.
Yeah, and the title is in the plural.
Yeah.
Clockstoppers.
Well, Clockstopper doesn't sound good. That sounds like a product you would buy, like on TV.
Clap on, clap off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off. The Clapper.
The Clapper is now available at Thrifty Drug. Get yours today. Makes a great gift.
Clockstopper. It's like a snooze button, but it actually stops the clock completely.
I don't know. I had the wrong perception of this movie. However, I'm trying to give it some praise because largely, no, this is not a very good movie. But I think that we skipped over the scenes that we should also talk about, which is the discovery of the watch, of what it does. You know, he takes the watch because he finds it in a box of junk and thinks, oh, this is cool.
It falls out of its hiding spot because his little sister accidentally bumps something. It falls into a box of Zach's stuff, and then Zach just kind of
more or less. Yeah, something to that effect. But he just has it on him and accidentally stops time or starts hyper time, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And they have a whole sequence for discovering that. And I happen to make note that Mr. Frakes, Will Riker himself, had a really good first shot of this. When Zach uses it for the first time, and it does a little spinny thing that I don't get, first of all. Ooh, hyper time has started, and he spins. But it's a shot of Zach, and then when he walks away, behind him is the little sister on the swing has stopped.
Yeah.
Here's the character, and as he walks away, he reveals what the world has done around him. I thought it was a pretty clever shot.
There's also a sprinkler or something.
The sprinkler is the other part, yeah. And the bee.
Very cool. Yeah, the bee.
The honeybee is how they learn that they haven't stopped time.
Right.
Because those wings are moving so fast that they can see the thing is technically moving. And then Francesca, she has a really great moment where she plays with the paused water in the sky. You know, there's some interesting stuff that he's doing there.
This is the period where he finds the possum out by the trash can and thinks it's dead, but he's really just in hyper time, and he brings it inside the house.
Yeah, why would you bring something you think is dead into your,
into your girlfriend's house? He is not in with her yet.
No, not at all.
She asked him to come over and then made him work in the yard. So he is trying to earn the right to even be in Francesca's presence right now. And the first thing he does is come inside and present her with an opossum.
Yeah. That he assumes is dead.
My note there when she said, yeah, come on over at 4, and he goes over there, I said, ha ha, she's putting him to work. Rake the yard, bitch, was my note.
I think that was kind of clever also, though.
I do, too.
His wording was, can your plans include me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have plans.
Okay, how about after your plans?
I have more plans.
We can set your stretch for maybe some of your plans to include me.
All right. I guess we all deserve a second chance.
Yeah.
And her plans were to rake the yard. And
her
she's
plans
like,
were yard
sure.
work.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So, all kidding aside, I think that the actress playing Francesca is very charming.
She's charming.
The lines she's got and the attitude that she exudes land very well for the purpose she's there for.
Yeah.
I buy her completely, and I honestly buy Zach completely. Like, these are two fairly well-realized but pretty basic characters.
Archetypal and...
Yeah.
Well, like, why does she have to be a consulate daughter? She's like the daughter of a high-ranking government official from Venezuela.
And you'd think that maybe would come back, because we know that the government is involved in all of this. But it doesn't come back.
There's no reason for it.
She's got that convertible.
But any rich kid could have that.
It didn't go anywhere, and it added really nothing.
Right.
But again, this movie is like 94 minutes long or something. I really do think there's some legitimate padding in this movie. Stuff that is just there to flesh out the runtime.
Yeah. The story is, let's call it uninspired and really like a missed opportunity, really.
Yeah.
I mean, concept here that you don't do anything with.
Yeah,
you know,
ultimately, not a lot is done with it.
We're talking about stopping time. We're talking about super speed. Can't do anything clever with this. And like I said, they take that start of the movie and they set up the father and son in mending this relationship.
Yeah.
And then they don't really deliver on that.
They think they do.
Right. Exactly.
But they don't really. What do they really bond over at the end? Dad says, "Who's your friend?"
Who's your friend, Zach?
Francesca. From school.
No wonder you wanted a car.
Like, gross, Dad. Like, come on, dude.
I mean, at the end of the day,
they bond over how hot Francesca is. Okay. Nice.
Well, I was going to say it's more about, I told them to leave you out of it. I was sacrificing my life for your safety.
Yes.
And then he comes to save his dad, and he's upset that his dad didn't want to be saved because he's putting himself in danger. These are indicative of the problem that they've been having.
Not a solution. Yeah.
You know, so it's just like, he kind of tries.
You came here?
Well, what was I supposed to do?
Oh, Zach, no. I was only cooperating with them so that they leave you alone.
Well, I couldn't just leave you here to die.
So you had to come join me?
What?
Oh, Zach.
Dad, you're always saying that I only show up when I need something. Now I'm trying to help you. You don't even appreciate it?
I'm sorry, but putting your life in the hands of terrorists is not exactly what I had in mind.
What is it with you? It's a good thing I'm just your son instead of one of your precious students. Then you'd be really disappointed.
That's ridiculous.
Right?
What are you talking about? That whole thing
You two just stop it? Jeez. You really are a lot of life.
Like, the resolution is that at the end, Zach's got that car he wanted. Like, that's kind of it. You could just assume that they resolved it.
So we both got what he wanted and sort of what he needed.
Yeah.
Writing 101, folks. Give your character a goal that they think they need, but present them throughout the course of the story with what they really need, that they don't know that they need.
Yeah,
this did that, and then didn't deliver them with the actual need. But they did deliver them with the want.
There's no moment at the end where they, like, hug, even. Is there?
No. They just kind of bond over the car, really.
And Dad apologizes to him at one point about not being there and kind of putting his work above Zach. And there's a scene early on where George goes to Zach's room and he's about to leave for his conference, and he wants to say more than he can to Zach, and just ultimately says, "Here's my phone number if you need to call me." And it's like, yeah, and he can't really get anything emotional out. And then, like, later on, Dad apologizes to Zach. But it's not just Dad who's the problem, you know? Like, it's also Zach, and Zach doesn't have that realization.
Well, what about when they're in the science fair? There's a point where they go to the science emporium or whatever it is, and his dad has like an entire wing devoted to him or something.
Right, and he's kind of looking at it, and that student of his dad's is like, wow, he's so great. And Zach's like, yeah, I guess he is.
But why?
Yeah, it's like one of those trifold things that they have at science fair, but like a giant one. that's what the display is for his dad.
Yeah. The problem that they've laid out is that the father spends too much time and energy on his students and not enough energy on his family and his son. I guess there's some good imagery when he's working down in the basement.
I don't know how you work in all this mess.
Honey, why'd you do that? I was going to fix that for you.
Sweetheart, I bought a new toaster a year ago.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to leave with something like this between Zach and me either. But it's just... Honey, he's got so much potential. And yeah, right now he can skate by, but it's going to catch up to him.
Like, oh, I was going to fix that toaster. And he's like, yeah, but I had to buy a new toaster like 4 years ago because he's so...
Right.
Like all these things that he intends to do, but never follows through with or never gets around to.
He's like Reed Richards, but
boring.
Yeah, like a boring Reed Richards.
It's almost like, hey, I know how to tell a story, but it's also kind of like this story
gives you an interesting concept and doesn't give you anything new. Everything in the movie plays out exactly like you think it's going to play out, with the only exception being that Meeker is really bad at being a DJ.
That's the big twist.
I remember later when he does come back the next time, it opens on him in the sports store ogling like a woman's catalog.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Meeker, what is this guy?
Yeah, it's actually a little disturbing, especially for Nickelodeon.
Extraordinarily off-putting. Yeah.
I'm
going to sit at home and ogle the ladies in the Victoria's Secret catalog. See his catalog.
See his catalog. Ding!
The girl calls him Mr. Second Chance Man more than once.
Multiple times in the movie.
That didn't turn out so bad after all, Mr. Second Chance Man.
Mr. Second Chance Man.
Francesca, do you know English or do you not? You got to pick a lane.
Mr. Second Chance Man.
Sweet dreams, Mr. Second Chance Man. Had fun.
People say things like, oh, this could have been an email.
Yeah, right.
This could have been a music video. Because there's not enough story to support 90 minutes. But there's a lot of neat visual aspects to this.
Yeah.
And a lot of story that could have been communicated with less talking and more visual components. I don't think we needed Francesca and Zach to ever say one word to each other to understand what their relationship is. And I think the same is true of Zach and his dad, if I'm being honest. And I think if we had just made a song, like let's say Uncle Cracker's cover of Time After Time.
Or you could choose a good one.
Or you could get a better song. The thing that sticks with me, there's this neat visual element when they take the BMW and the car goes into hypertime. When the car is driving and the other cars on the street are going so slowly, and there's those kind of like streak effects.
Yeah, or even just on the bike.
Cool.
And the lights and stuff.
Yeah. Very cool stuff there, right?
And I think that's why it's stuck in my brain. In my brain was the imagery of the bicycle and the blurring lights and stuff. And like I said, I thought there was probably 3 of them, and I thought they were on some kind of superhero mission or something. But it turns out it's just, don't let the bad guys have the watch. So I alluded earlier to the moment that I felt like it went off the rails.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
It might be hard to point out.
If it's not the DJ thing, then that means it must have come before the DJ thing.
The DJ thing was like the low point.
Okay.
So when I say off the rails, it's like, okay, yeah, I realize this is not a great scene. But I was ready to get back on board. The moment that I just decided the garbage truck picks them up like a garbage can.
Yeah, that's weird.
In the alley. And dumps them into the garbage. And it's French Stewart
It's inside the garbage truck.
Yeah. And this is the moment, folks, when French Stewart really starts to French Stewart it up.
He really does.
And you realize that you're watching the direct-to-video sequel of a movie that must have had some kind of moderate success at the box office.
Right.
Because it reads and feels so much like Inspector Gadget 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Mask 2 with Jamie Kennedy.
You know what I don't like? Getting kicked in the head.
Some kind of
pale imitation
of something else.
That is literally just a cash grab.
Yes, and that's what this whole movie ends up feeling like. And French Stewart is the epitome of that kind of thing.
I get that completely.
Who do you get when you can't get Jim Carrey for your straight-to-video?
Hi, how are you? Ready to give me that watch?
He starts goofballing it up. He's just like
His line is, I love my country. Now give me the watch so I can go to Costa Rica.
And don't even think about touching that dial.
Okay. What did you do with my dad? I know you're a spy. It's all over the news.
That's not true. I love my country. Now give me the watch so I can go to Costa Rica. And no funny business, okay? Or your hottie here gets it.
Okay, here.
First chance I get, I'm kicking you right between the eyes.
That's it. Come to Papa, baby. I am so out of here. Dude, you got it wet.
That's actually not...
Ha-ha!
Yeah. Zing! But he says it with that French Stewart kind of voice.
Even if the setup is not great, it's functional.
Yeah, right.
The third act of this, when they actually go and get one over on the bad guys, it's not great. Boring.
It's like everybody's going through the motions. We know everything that's going to happen. We know exactly how it's going to play out.
There's no emotion. Nothing really at stake. There's
not really anything at stake. No.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, here's the thing. Dr. Kelso from Scrubs is going to come and take all the equipment in a few hours anyway. You know?
Right.
I didn't mention that he's got a cameo in this movie.
And did we even... I know you mentioned the actor by name, but the bad guy is Kyle Reese from Terminator.
Yeah. Yeah, Kyle Reese. Oh, he's also Hicks in Aliens. Yeah. Michael Biehn was in a ton of movies back at the 80s. Mr. Action Man.
Well, I know him as Kyle Reese.
You'll also remember him from the Season 2 episode of The Mandalorian titled The Jedi, the one that brings Ahsoka back.
Oh.
Yeah, he was like the muscle in that town that she was trying to bust into.
Okay.
Yeah. How about that?
I take your word for it.
If we're looking for people who maybe have seen something, in the last 5 years and weren't old enough to watch Cockknockers when it came out, then maybe this Mandalorian might do it.
Brian, let me ask you a question. Do you remember how they take you out of hypertime?
How they take you out? By freezing you.
Right.
With a freeze ray.
With liquid nitrogen pellets or something?
It's like a paintball gun, but with liquid nitrogen.
That freezes your molecules so your molecules stop vibrating fast or something.
It all sounds very, very risky.
It's an excuse to be able to shoot people with paintball.
I mean, that's really all it is, yeah. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much of your body is covered in it, 2-inch diameter spot on your chest,
and
but
it
you
freezes
drop
your
out
whole
of
body
hypertime.
down.
You're done with hypertime at that
And
point.
it doesn't kill you or whatever, it just makes you suddenly...
Now they, to be fair, freeze the absolute hell out of Gates at the end of this movie, right?
True.
To defeat the bad guy, you got to really freeze him.
But see, here's the thing. So the big problem that the bad guy's trying to get around is that hypertime ages you super fast if you're in it for an extended period.
Yeah.
They use hypertime with reckless abandon in this movie.
Yeah.
And there's very little repercussion.
Very few consequences.
They put the whole building in hypertime.
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
We need to talk about that.
Okay.
Because I'm very fuzzy about how all of this works, because the building itself appears to be in hypertime. When Zach and Francesca enter hypertime in the building, an alarm sounds that's like unauthorized hypertime.
I thought that was kind of neat.
But you can hear it
in
real time in hypertime, because the whole building's in hypertime. I was like, huh? So if we're touching the building, but how does that work? Because,
well,
I mean, obviously we're sitting in the car, we make the car go in hypertime, but we're standing on the Earth. How is the fucking Earth not in hypertime all the time?
Well, it's strange because when they start, they go into hypertime, and like you said, there's the alarm that somebody used hypertime, but then they've got guards in the building that are also in hypertime, but not everybody that's working in the building is in hypertime. So, like, they have to watch out for the people that are also moving fast.
Right.
And they get to have a big action sequence throughout an office where a bunch of people are paused because they're in normal time, but us and all the security guards, we're in hypertime and we're moving super fast. So it's weird because these guys are just constantly in hypertime, but they're not aging. But at the end, he puts the whole building into a big hypertime bubble. I don't know.
Here's another hypertime question, too. Something that got on my nerves a little bit. I think it was when Zach was in the hospital.
Yeah, where he got the watch wet.
Yeah, the watch got wet.
Anymore.
And like a gremlin, you don't want to get the watch wet.
Dude, you got it wet.
Yeah, because it acts just like any other digital watch. For those of you who remember digital watches.
They get all that sweat underneath the display. That's how you know it's fucked. Like, this watch is not coming back now.
I will say that one of the cooler things about hypertime, I guess, or the use of it, is, I guess, earlier in the movie, before things went off the rails, the bad guys are searching his house.
Yeah.
And he comes back on his bike, and he's in hypertime, but he can tell people are in the house moving at regular speed.
Moving at regular speed in relation to him.
So
he knows, wait a minute, are they in hypertime too? Like, that is very clever. And he just sees the flashlights and the movement.
That was kind of fun.
Yeah, lots of little clever things peppered throughout this.
Some very forced things as well. Like, let's screw with people and make some funny things happen.
They do need to remind you that these people are teenagers, I guess. Maybe this is how Francesca ends up being 27 in this movie, is because being in hypertime.
I'm glad she's 27.
Yeah, I know. It makes you feel a whole lot better.
Makes you feel a little better, yeah.
She's always been our age. It's okay.
Because I'm still 27 in my brain.
Right. I want to ask you about where Zach enters double hypertime.
Right.
He goes double hypertime, like the Flash, when the Flash moves super fast and can phase through objects.
Yeah.
So he can actually pass through things and walk through the wall and escape the cell that way, right?
Or like when Ant-Man puts the PIM particles into his belt that already runs on PIM particles.
Double, yeah. Extra shrinkage.
Twice as small.
I was in the pool! I was in the pool!
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's got this really kind of Silver Age nonsense kind of vibe to it. Oh, this is convenient.
Yeah, I mean, but what happens if you activate a hypertime field inside a hypertime field? You go extra hypertime fast.
So for a more thoughtful rumination on this kind of thing, you should probably just watch Interstellar.
Okay.
Kind of the end of Interstellar is something very similar, where it's like you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into this thing. And this thing is like a singularity.
Are you saying that Christopher Nolan ripped off Clockstoppers?
Clockstoppers, yeah. You heard it here first, folks. So there are a few Easter eggs peppered throughout this movie.
Why did he do that?
Why did he include the Star Trek thing?
Make it so, number one.
Your audience didn't like your show, man.
This is between Star Trek Insurrection and Star Trek Nemesis. So Star Trek is at its waning days in this movie.
Even at its height, the people that are going to this movie are the people that are laughing at the people that liked Star Trek. This is a different era, man.
Yeah, you're right.
It wasn't... Star Trek The Next Generation was not cool. I didn't let people know that I liked that show. I didn't let people know I read comics.
Goddamn death sentence. What are you talking about?
I guess I didn't hide it, but I wasn't, like, advertising out there.
I was doing my student teaching back in, like, 2007, and I was at a high school, and this kid walked by in a Deadpool shirt in 2007, and I was like... boy, we really fucking made it, didn't we? Like that's all I could think. We finally made it.
5 years removed from this, so maybe I'm a little off base. But what we're talking about, if that's been missed, is...
Shall we?
Make it so, number one.
She says, make it so, number one, which is a clear reference to Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, specifically the director of this movie.
And so the director has put this joke into this movie. If it didn't stick out so poorly...
It does stand out. It pulls you right out of the movie.
It does. It pulls you right out of the movie because she wouldn't say that. I don't care if she knows.
We don't know what Venezuelan television is like. I don't know what she wants. Remember, the whole plot of WandaVision focused on they didn't get TV in Sokovia, so they had to rely on the DVDs her dad brought home, and they were all sitcoms and stuff from like the 50s.
WandaVision, though.
Yeah, so maybe all they had to go on were those... You remember when they used to sell on TV those VHS Next Generation episodes? You could buy entire seasons, but it was like 2 episodes per tape.
Yes, my father had a ton of those.
It would take you like more than 80 tapes to get the whole series.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. This joke not only requires that she be familiar with Star Trek in Venezuela, but also the more surprising thing is that he, as a teenager in 2002, would think she was cool for saying it.
Recognizes the reference.
Recognizes the reference.
That does defy plausibility.
And then I mentioned the Flash t-shirt. Were there other Easter eggs you were going to mention?
There are a couple more Easter eggs. Speaking of Jonathan Frakes, did you see him in the movie?
Mm-mm.
He has a cameo in the movie at that science symposium that Zach and his buddies break into. They walk past a booth that says Pro Clone Organization. And Frakes, who famously, Riker had a transporter-generated clone on The Next Generation.
And also murdered his own clone.
Yes.
Don't forget he murdered his own clone in that season 2 episode.
Yeah, that's true. But he's pro-clone here.
I know too much about this.
And he's behind the table. You see him very briefly. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
And the other, this one has nothing to do with Star Trek, but it is a cultural touchstone, I think. When Zach and Francesca are tooling around with Hypertime the first time, Zach mentions, with such awesome power comes awesome responsibility. At least that's what my dad would say. And the reason that's significant is because this is summer of 2002, and it's the year that Spider-Man opened.
Yeah.
The first Spider-Man movie came out this same summer. So it's a cultural line that is fresh in everybody's head when this movie
came out the same summer as Spider-Man?
The first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, yeah.
Wow.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
Yeah, I know why I didn't see Clockstoppers now.
We were just busy watching Spider-Man over and over again.
Watching who's going to choose Clockstoppers over Spider-Man.
You kids want to go to the movies? Yeah! Clockstoppers!
Spider-Man's all sold out. Should we see Clockstoppers? One other thing I did want to mention is, Hypertime was DC Comics' answer to the multiverse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it predated this.
Exactly. They got rid of the multiverse, and then they needed it back. And since they couldn't use the multiverse because of the crisis on Infinite Earths, Mark Waid, in his infinite wisdom, created Hypertime.
Yes.
Which, at the time, I was not a big fan of.
Was that 0 Hour?
I think it was 0 Hour or something like that. It was a way of creating a time stream that was basically a multiverse without there being multiple Earths.
Yeah.
And they basically just threw that away eventually, too. But I've always known the name Hypertime as DC's new multiverse.
I've always associated it with DC, with like 90s DC. Can't get out of that shadow, Frakes. So, time travel in this story.
Such as it is.
We're talking about time dilation. So the user is moving fast, the surroundings slow to a crawl. It's all relational. It alters the experience of passing time for the user in that the user ages at a rate that is consistent with their time experience. So time ultimately passes faster in hypertime than it does in reality because they're just living at a faster rate.
So they need a de-aging machine.
Yeah, that de-aging machine does come to fruition. I guess we should talk about that. That the final moments of this movie, Doppler, who has, in fairness, aged more than anybody else in the movie, uses the de-aging machine and shows up at the Gibbs house as a looks like 13-year-old child.
20-something? Oh, okay.
I mean, he seems like a very young child. In fact, Zach's little sister is now just enamored with him, which opens up all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
So questionable.
In reality, he's supposed to be how old? 30?
Doppler is supposed to be in his 30s, I think. Old enough to have been one of George's students at some point.
And at the end of this movie, he goes out joyriding in the backseat of a hot rod convertible with a 14-year-old.
Yeah. Good for you. But hey, the movie found a reason to completely get rid of Meeker at this point.
A Vicky.
So,
yeah.
So
Meeker's completely gone.
We got young Doppler now. We do not need Meeker anymore.
And they just have a Clockstopper watch?
Yeah.
Because they just go into hypertime at the end.
Here's the thing. They drive off. They drive off at the end, straddling the lines in the road. They're not in either lane. They're not in the right lane. They're not in the left lane. They're straddling right up the center of the road. The police start chasing them very justifiably because they're driving recklessly, and the kids enter hypertime to get away from the cop.
And what are the...
This is not the best message to end your movie on.
And what are the parents doing? They're like standing on the porch, smiling and waving, like, oh, those crazy kids.
Those scamps.
Off getting chased by the police.
Who knows what they'll get up to next time?
Like the dad and Pat from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. What a wild fucking ending.
Who's the woman that plays that?
Julia Sweeney.
Julia Sweeney plays the mom in this movie.
She's a good mom.
Sure. She does try to put the son and the father together. Tell him that there's a divide that needs to be bridged.
If you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
So, I guess we're gonna
rate the watch?
Rate the time travel method here.
Well, I feel like we at one point assumed something was going to be under the clock that went backwards.
Do you think the Clockstopper watch is under that?
I didn't think it'd be this soon. But let's be honest, the watch itself is cheap as shit.
It's a really cheap watch. Like, it's...
When you look at that, it's like this big bulky plastic. You know, everything was like bulky plastic in 2001.
It's just a watch that's like the size of a Tamagotchi. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. It's neon colored. There's nothing interesting about it because it has to be confused with a regular watch.
It doesn't actually appear to tell time, much like the clock that went backwards.
It does not go.
Your clock does not go. Does it ever go?
Yeah.
I would put it at the bottom.
Functionally, I see the value. I see the value in having a stupid clunky watch on my wrist because being able to move quickly from place to place does sound appealing. Aging rapidly is a real ding.
Now you've got the de-ager can make you 13 again.
I don't really want to be 13 again. I would like to just go back to what I was that morning before I started using the hypertime thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some kinks to work out. But as it exists in this movie, man.
You don't think this is the bottom?
Man, that clock is big. It's cumbersome. You have to drag it across the ocean at one point. It only takes you one goddamn place.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
okay.
It's a shitty fucking clock.
It's an ornate clock. One.
It looks very nice. It's got a nice sculpture.
Two,
at the top of it.
it's like got all this great imagery and like storms and stuff like that. I guess we're still kind of working out the kinks on what our metrics are for this. But to me, I feel like the first Time Machine is a little cooler than this big, bulky 2002 plastic watch.
I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Do you want to go over the clock that went backwards and under Looper? This is definitely under Looper,
for sure.
right?
It's definitely under Looper. It's for sure under Looper. And I'm just talking pure functionality at this point.
Functionality. Okay. Well, functionality, super speed is like my choice of power.
It's pretty
If I could
cool.
have a power, I'd do super speed.
I mean, possums, you can carry possums around.
Possums aside.
I would place this above the clock that went backwards and below the Looper
really?
tank. Yeah, personally.
Wow. All right. I feel like you made a concession last week by letting me have Time Cop above Midnight in Paris.
Yeah, for sure I did.
So I will make a concession here and let you have this shitty watch be above my ornate Norwegian
fine
clock.
Norwegian clock. I will tell you that I can't fathom that anything will drive a wedge between those two items anytime soon on our list.
They're
those
at the
two
bottom.
Are firmly at the bottom, and I think the Clockstopper watch only gets the edge just because you get to move quick and you have a little bit more control over it.
I would definitely give you the Clockstopper watch if they'd done something interesting with the watch. It's just dumb. It's just this ugly. It's ugly. It's like ugly 2001's plastic bulkiness.
Okay, all right, okay, you've changed my mind because at least
no.
I
got almost written it down here.
Here's the thing, because the clock that went backwards literally saved democracy. So I think to that extent it should get the edge. And you're right. Nobody in this movie knows how to use this fucking watch for anything.
Okay.
That DJ competition alone should be disqualifying. Okay, yeah, you win.
Well, if it's for the use of the time machine, well, that's a whole other aspect, man. It's the looper machine's being used to kill people.
Well, that's still pretty rad. Mob executions are objectively cool.
I think our ranking system is becoming very objective.
Yeah.
Or subjective.
Is. So, okay, I'm with you. Clockstopper watch is below.
Bottom of the barrel.
Is below the clock that went backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a made-for-TV movie.
I was going to say, like this is the same time like Jimmy Neutron was coming out. Jimmy Neutron came out, I think, 2001. And that was a pilot for a show, deliberately. I wonder if they intended for Clockstoppers to be like a show and this to be a big screen pilot for it. Because it feels like it was. You'll be able to get all of these guys back except Michael Biehn, and he's gone now.
Right.
French Stewart is going to do your fucking show. I'm sorry.
Where was he in his career? This was post Third Rock, right?
Yeah, I think it was over. I think it was over at this point.
Yeah.
He was starting that era of just being in this movie over and over again.
Right. Yeah, he's the one that dragged this thing down.
The whole enterprise.
A lot of it. Are we glad we watched it? I'm glad I know what it is now.
Absolutely. I'm glad I know what it is. Yeah.
Like I knew what I thought it was, and now I know what it is. Got to think about what highbrow property are we watching next, Brian?
Oh, geez. I don't know. Do we have a list? I don't remember on the list.
Well, I think we're on to Loki next.
Oh, yeah. I think it is.
Because...
Time to watch Loki. Yeah.
I feel it's a safe assumption that Deadpool Wolverine will be a time travel movie.
We're going to be here for it. And we know that the Time Variance Authority shows up in Deadpool and Wolverine. So we are going to be talking about that movie in a month. And between now and then, we're going to kind of bookend Loki Season 2 and talk about that a bit.
Yeah, leading up to the first R-rated Marvel Cinematic Universe movie.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe we'll find our own glorious purpose in this pursuit. You'll have to listen to find out, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode. Hey, why don't you follow us on your favorite podcast apps, like, subscribe, whatever you need to do there to make sure you never miss an episode. Tell your friends, tell some enemies.
And show them this episode.
Tell some friends about Midnight in Paris. Tell some enemies to check out Clockstoppers. Check us out on YouTube.
I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
Check us out on YouTube and also follow us there. Hey, and while you're on YouTube, roll over to the Paprika channel on YouTube and check out our most recent draft, which is live for you to listen to now. Bunch of guys got together and did a dudes draft where we drafted things like fight scenes and superhero brawls and car chases.
That podcast this week, right?
Yeah, I was on that with some of the usual suspects in our draft challenges. You can also send us an email. Our email address, ohboyqlpod@gmail.com. Send us whatever you like. GIFs, recipes,
Haikus. You're big into haikus.
I did pitch for time travel haikus last time, so feel free. Write a haiku, and maybe we have to guess what movie the haiku is about.
Somebody sends us a haiku, I'll send them a Snickers bar.
That's the way. And also, of course, you can find us on some social media platforms. I am at Captain Byrne, CaptnBern on Blue Sky. I am Brian.Lee.Martin on Threads and Instagram.
And I am at Action Nate on both Blue Sky and Threads.
And thanks again, folks, for listening and coming on this cock-knocking, clop-stopping, clap-trapping journey with us. Until next time, I'm Brian.
And I'm Nate.
And we'll see you in the future.
Shall we?
Make it so, number one.
Oh, man. Clockstoppers.